This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good yawning this morning, and it's time for On the Clock. It is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023, and on the clock, we engage organizations, institutions, social and cultural leaders, and ordinary people to better understand the impact of public policy, private sector development, and emerging social consumer trends. On the clock, we have conversations that help us understand and navigate a rapidly changing Bahamas. And of course, this is not Erin Greene. This is C.A. Nuri, who is in studio as Erin Greene convalesced from fighting with raccoons, or is it Chick Chinese? But Erin Greene is here. She's going to join me via Zoom, and I yield now to make sure that she's connected. Erin, are you there?
Good morning this morning, Mr. Nuri. Good morning, Bahamas.
And before we start, how you feeling? How the leg?
The leg is fine. It's the foot that's giving me the problem. I can be honest with you. I'm good, though. Very good.
There's a Bible quote that says, if your foot offend you, cut it off. I hope that helps.
I'm about to.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the new foot to get here on the Betty King.
I understand. The shipment has taken a while. But I see what we have lined up for today, and I think it's an interesting discussion. But before we start that, before you take charge, let's do some housekeeping. Who would you want to... I want to say, first of all, right, I'm not sure if you know that today is Lyndon Pinlin's birthday.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to wish him, you can't wish him happy birthday. What do you say when a person has transitioned, but it's their birthday?
You say you want to commemorate the anniversary of their birth.
Okay, I want to do that. I want to commemorate the anniversary of the father of our nation's birth. And of course, as we go on, we'll find out that is one of the topics that we could plan to talk about today. But go ahead, I yield to you now.
Well, Mr. Nuri, I know we have a discussion for this morning, and I'm pretty much committed to it. There's so many interesting and I think important headlines in today's paper. So if we have enough time in my hour after our initial discussion, we may feel compelled to take a look at The Guardian. The headline is an interesting story. I feel betrayed.
2 days straight, the Guardian being hot.
Yeah. Toby Smith hits out at PM. Bahamas joins effort to hold U.S. gun makers accountable for crimes in region. Eviction notices issued to Abaco Shantytown residents. Immigration officers put on leave pending investigation. Minister tells F&Ms we need to focus on the real problem, the PLP. I did just so many stories. There's another one. In the back of the Tribune, Uganda's legislature passes harsh new anti-LGBTQ bill. And so maybe we'll have some time. If we look in today's Tribune, there's an article, the proper action was taken not to land those persons in our country. Another immigration story. We have time. Maybe we will get to some of those. But this morning, if you're ready, I'd love to get us into the conversation.
I was born ready, Erin. Always ready.
Absolutely. This Friday, the Independent Secretariat is hosting another event in the calendar events for the 50th Independence Celebration. This event is another installment or series of the 1973 Master Class. I imagine this is a space created to bring key figures, individuals, stakeholders in the move to independence to the fore to engage the wider Bahamas about their experience or particular experience or an iconic figure in Bahamian history. And this Friday at Bahama at 6:30 p.m., the 1973 Masterclass series is hosting a discussion with the title, The Life and Legacy of Lyndon Oscar Pinlin. So today, I wanted to do a couple of things to sort of preempt that conversation and get us warmed up for what we may hear, but also to create a space where Bahamians can think about it, think about the sort of the question implied in the title, the questions implied in the title, and prepare to engage this event. Now, I know the event is at Bahama, and despite what people think, because it has tremendous parking capacity, it's not the most accessible venue in the Bahamas. And so I want to bring this conversation to a wider audience, to an audience that may not feel compelled to attend this discussion at a mega resort, right? I hope to expand also the way we think about these discussions, and in particular, the way we think about accessibility. And I want to say take a moment, Mr. Nuri, if you don't mind, separate from our discussion, to take a moment to say to the Independent Secretariat, this is not what accessibility looks like. This is not what a national celebration looks like. This is what celebrating the political class looks like. This is a fascinating discussion that, quote unquote, the average Bahamian would not only enjoy, but would expand through their contributions. Yet we continue to relegate or make these spaces exclusive to the political class. What would have been fantastic is if these conversations were hosted in community spaces, on constituency parks, using the Wi-Fi that the PLP administration so graciously installed to broadcast so that people could, if they were unable to leave their homes, could move from event to event to event, catching a bit of what everybody's perspective is in constituencies or communities. And so I'm excited that they're having the conversation, but I'm even more excited that I have an opportunity and that you, Mr. Nuri, are helping me expand the conversation to the wider Bahamas. Because I think it's going to be a good one.
I echo some of your sentiments. I appreciate this, what is happening, especially at this particular time, the 50th anniversary of the Bahamas, independence anniversary of Bahamas. And who is better fitting than having the father of the nation analyzed, declared, and appreciated? And I quicken the question to say, what type of lecture will this be? Will it be a lecture of the man behind the scenes, a lecture of heralding him as a person, or a lecture of his humanity, his human personage in general? So I'm eager to find out what will be included, what would be in detailed. And then I'm quickened to ask you, who owns the legacy of the father of the nation?
Well, right before we get there, Mr. Nuri, let me throw a question out to the audience, and then let me just read a brief bio on Sir Lyndon, because I'm 46, you're a young spring Chichani, and we may know about Sir Lyndon, but I think we are presuming that younger generations of Bahamians understand Sir Lyndon in the same way that we do, right? So the question I want to throw out to the audience is, and I know you minding the phone and the text line, but what is your Pinland story? I'm going to share a quick story, and so people get a sense of what I mean. If you have a story about Pinland where you interacted with him, or a story was shared that impacted you greatly, I'm begging you to share it with us today. More importantly, I'm begging you to write it down so when the time is right, if now is not the right time, when the time is right, you have it prepared to share. And so, Mr. Nuri, I have my own Pinland story where I was volunteering in Mangrove Key Haitian Bible School. We bucked into him in a restaurant, and he took the whole team of volunteers out, put us up in Las Palmas for the night, took us on a tour of South Andres because he wanted to support people who were prepared to volunteer for their country. Right? But here's a story. A person told me, quote, when they realized that Finland had captured the imagination of the Bahamian people. They said a friend told them they were in South Andres and they went to shake, they were working, a civil servant. They went to go and shake this older man's hand. And they extended their hand, the right hand. And the man stopped them and said, oh, no, miss, no, miss. Oh, no, you can't shake me with this hand. Finland shook this hand. And he politely offered her the other hand. And the person told me that's when they realized that Finland had captured the hearts and minds of the Bahamian people. And so I'm asking the Bahamian public, if you got a story like that, share it with us. Share it with the Bahamian people today so that we can get a sense of the man from outside the political lens or a different perspective of the man from within the political lens. You ready for this bio, Mr. Nuri?
I'm ready for the bio.
Like you said, today, Lynden Finland was born on today, but in 1930. He died, rest in peace, on 26th of August, 2000. Bahamian politician, led the country to majority rule in 1967. From 1956 to 1997, he won an unbroken string of general elections until 1992, actually. And then he won his seat 1997, I think. When the PLP lost to the Free National Movement, FNM leader, FNM Hubert Alexander Ingram took over, and Finland conceded with these famous words. This is where these famous words come from. The people of this great little democracy have spoken in a most dignified and eloquent manner, and the voice of the people is the voice of God. That's where that quote came from. He was sworn in as Her Majesty's Most Honorable Privy Council member in 1976, appointed Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, KCMG, in 1982. And in 2018, he was posthumously awarded the Bahamian Order of National Hero. He was born to Arnold and Viola Finling in his grandfather's home in Mason's Addition. His father is a native of Jamaica. His mother, whose maiden name was Bain, was from the island of Acklands, where she left as a child. So Lynden was the only child. Now here's something interesting. Between the ages of 7 and 9, Finling attended all 3 of the government's junior schools. He spent approximately 1 year in each. That's Eastern Junior on Bay Street, Southern Junior on Wolf Road, and Western Junior on the corner of Meeting Street and Hospital Lane. Now, this Wikipedia bio, Mr. News, he also got his BTE degree. You ever heard of that?
Yes.
Well, I need you to explain that to me in a minute.
Okay.
And then again, in 1953, Finland had joined the newly formed PLP as its legal advisor. So now Sir Henry Taylor became the parliamentary leader, was the leader. In 1956, Sir Lynden became parliamentary leader when the PLP chairman and de facto leader, Sir Henry Taylor, was defeated in the 1956 general election. Finling was elected the party's parliamentary leader over the dynamic and popular Labour leader, Sir Randall Fox. Now, this is a Wikipedia bio, so if anybody who was there on the corner when it happened knows differently, please call the show and share that with us. He married Lady Marguerite Finling in 1956 May, and in the next month, he successfully contested Nassau constituency. And he won successive elections to the House of Assembly 1962, 1967, 1972, 1977, 1982, 1987, 1992, and 1997. On Black Tuesday, we know about Black Tuesday, but he ended his speech by throwing the speaker's mace out of the House. He was elected prime minister in 1967. We moved to majority rule 1967. And thanks to Alvin Brannan and Randall Fox, two independent members, they joined the PLP, giving them the majority. We end the bio right there, Mr. Nuri.
Yes.
So the first question I have to you and the audience is, what is the legacy of Sir Lyndon Pinland? Who is Sir Lyndon to you? Leader, hero, villain, or the boy on the composition books, right? That's who he is, right?
As Milo in the composition book.
You sure there's not one composition book with him on it?
Not a one.
I just checking.
No, that's part of the legacy I need to investigate too, in terms of how do we honor so-called heroes.
Absolutely. And so the first question is, what is the legacy of Sir Lyndon?
And I thank you for asking me that question. First of all, I am concerned about the what is going to be held on Friday.
Yes,
that's Friday, right? Just trying to checking the notes and the date, right? Will the legacy of Sir Lyndon be explored, explained in detail, or is going to be a rehashing out of his political bio? And does the Bahamian public deserve more than just that? So when you ask what is the legacy of Sir Lyndon, I question whether we will ever know the legacy of Sir Lyndon, because we don't necessarily own the legacy, even though he has the title of Father of the Nation.
See, now, I find that interesting. Now, you could say to me, Mr. Nuri, that we don't own the rights to his image, right? You could say to me that we don't own the right to tell his story, personal biography, but you can't tell me that I, a Bahamian, we, a collection of Bahamians, don't have the right to discuss or to explore publicly what his legacy is.
And this is something I've been arguing for a while in terms of the image and the right to explain his story. We know recently when they put Sir Lyndon's face on the $1 bill, the government had to pay out about, I think, $1 million for the photographer who actually took the picture. So when we say,
hold on.
Go ahead.
So what you're telling me is that there wasn't like a government photographer, like there wasn't a photo taken by a civil servant that could have been used, because the government obviously already paid for that.
But apparently it wasn't used, and then that's why we had to compensate the photographer for it. And when you say we don't have a right, perhaps do not have the right to Sir Lyndon's image, and then you have specific photographs owned by the family from their personal records, and then there are a number of photographs which was in his published inside his book. I don't know if we have the right to lift those photographs and use them into any personal or private or a professional way without consulting the family. So that is something that we need to investigate and put to bed moving forward. Do we have the right as citizens of the Bahamas access to the father of the nation? Or does the family has the ultimate right to say, no, you cannot use his image in that way?
Oh, goodness. I guess I'm thankful then that one of his legacies is because look how long it's going to take somebody to figure out how to sue me for using an image of Sir Lyndon. Now, if you tell me, look, I don't want people making money off of the image of my father, I'm willing to talk about it, right? I'm willing to sit down and negotiate, well, what are the rules? What are the terms?
And that has yet to be done. We just do not know. Recently, when I say recently, within 2 years, a fledgling political party used the image of Sir Lyndon and put the leader, had the image of Sir Lyndon and his picture, private picture, juxtaposed, said, well, I am like Sir Lyndon and we are doing this for the nation. We are nationalists. And immediately the family came out and said, how dare you use my daddy picture like that? You don't own the rights to my daddy's image. Take it off immediately, or we will pursue whatever they had to pursue. And that's why I bring up the idea of who owns the legacy of Slinden, and by contrast, the image of Slinden, or can you pull up the picture because he is a national hero, a national icon, and say, man, I could put this on my shirt. I could put this on my backpack. I could use this in my essay. I could use this in my photo documentary, right? Moving forward. Do we have access or permission to use his image? And this is something that needs to be put to bed, that all Bahamians know moving forward, so we don't offend anybody in general. Because, there's an official legacy campaign that the family owns, where every year they honor and give tributes to their father.
Absolutely. So I'm looking right now. I just did a quick search. I'm looking at a search result under the Finance Ministry of Finance portal on the government website, right? And it's called politically exposed person. So I'm suggesting that we have already recognized politically exposed persons. The document is actually called Guidance on Politically Exposed Persons for DNFBPSs, supervised by the Compliance Commission of the Bahamas, right? And so I say, Sulinden Pinlin, father to some, father to the nation, is a politically exposed person. And the rules must be different for politically exposed persons and private citizens and residents.
Yes, I even have a text here that says, people have copyrights. Even as a public figure, stop trying to divide the country. Anytime a photo is being used in an official capacity, you have to pay. Stop. So I guess the texter is saying that, yes, the photo is private and that you need to pay whoever owns it. I assume that's what he's trying to say.
Right. I mean, that's a given. But if a picture was taken by a government photographer at a government event for government purposes, who owns that picture? And why would I, a citizen who pays taxes to this government, as my government, why would I then have to pay for that image? And why don't we have stock images available for use or for purchase for particular purposes? And is there a space that students from primary, from preschool to tertiary institutions, is there a space that they can get access to stock images of politically exposed persons for the purpose of their academic pursuits?
Interesting. But then I will ask you this, Erin. What is the father of a nation term? Who coined the phrase? How did Sulinden get that name or that title? And is that title gives the ability or gives permission to the general public to say, well, since he's the father of our nation, attached to our nationhood, therefore I have a right to him, as much right to him as his family?
I mean, absolutely. The article doesn't say who went to ask the same question, because you know plenty more than me. How was the term coined? I don't think he coined it. And I'm not sure that PLPs in his administration at the time that he was running the country coined it or framed it. And so it's very interesting. I want to ask the audience, what does the term father of the nation mean to you? And if Pinlin is your father of the nation, then what does that make Hubert Alexander Ingram, a.k.a. Papa?
Interesting. And just off the cuff, I would assume father of the nation, meaning the birth of a nation, like how they have in the United States, the birth of a nation, and their fight in 1776 for independence, right? And George Washington would become the father of the nation there, right? Right. I assume because he was the leader or prime minister of the Bahamas during our advent to in the phrase "Father of the Nation" has been coined on him. But then there is a narrative of how we became independent and champions of independence. In a interview with Salinden, when he's being interviewed by the British media, he said that he's not pursuing independence at this present time, and in fact, he's uneasy about independence. And as a social narrative, we hear that A.D. Hanna was the champion of independence, a champion of Bahamianization, right? He was the lobbyer of it, and that Pinland would have to be convinced, and he join in on that bandwagon that yes, we should pursue independence. But there's also no legacy, no narrative, no champion of A.D. Hanna's narrative also as to where he stand in terms of the Bahamian nationhood, as to how it came about. So that's interesting also. I mean, I'm not taking away the title of Father of the Nation of Salinden. How does that impact a person like A.D. Hanna, who was what they call the architect? The person who goaded the nation toward that. Where does he fit?
Well, I was going to say, I wonder, did Pinling actually orchestrate the push to independence, right? Or is he the original version of Mark Zuckerberg, where you take the face of the platform at the right time, right? That you are just another element in a well-oiled machine, everybody playing their part. The illusion is that the illusion is one man, one leader, but in actuality, right, it's a different mechanism, political mechanism and function of power. Another question I had right on that topic of Bahamianization, right? And the question is Bahamianization dangerous nationalist rhetoric?
Ooh.
Or was it a good idea, and referencing your commentary, was it a good idea that A.D. Hanna came up with, but that was poorly implemented by a Pinling administration or successive Pinling administrations?
And again, in an interview with Salinden, the media, the foreign press asked him, there has been an outflux of foreign nationals out of the country, and questioned whether this was done by the government and making foreigners feel unwanted, right? And as they pursue that Bahamianization concept, and he answered, well, wasn't there a contract up and over? Right, and the person that had to acknowledge that. And don't we have Bahamians who are competent of doing the job, right? So Bahamianization is a term of empowerment, I think, where there was a need to empower Bahamians in general. And I see, Erin, your phone is blinking, so whenever you're ready, we can patch one or two of those callers in.
Let's take the calls.
Okay, producer, patch that first caller through. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Go ahead. We can hear you. How are you doing?
Oh, yeah. Good morning, Mary and Miss Greene.
Good morning,
The thing is that you have a very interesting conversation, but let me just say this. The man has only one image, right? And the thing is that he has played a pivotal role in the development of the nation. Now, the conflict comes in when you have members of his family saying, one thing, you can't use his image for this, you can't use his image for that kind of thing. The views of a family cannot supersede the interests of the country. We have to settle that once and for all. Yes, he is their personal father, but he's also father of the nation. Now, if every time we want to use his image, we got to get permission from the Pinling family, I think I have a serious problem with that. Because you're saying that his life in the fulfillment of the things that the country has achieved, personal preference takes precedence interest. And Ms. Greene, that cannot be right. While I'm not going to get into a fight with the Pinling family, I think that we got to settle this matter once and for all, because you asked, and you really asked a lot of questions we don't have any clear-cut answers. But the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And when I look at that Constitution, I do not see where the rights of the minority could supersede the rights of the majority. So Lyndon played a pivotal role. We cannot allow what has happened to be dragged on because either the family collectively or individual members of that family going to say to me in the public, he is my father because he's the father of the nation. Say to me, Mrs. Thompson, you cannot use this image for this particular thing. You have to get permission from me. Now, I got a serious problem with that.
Yes, sir.
Because
I think creating, like Mr. Nuri said, creating a set of rules, a set of guidelines, preserves the integrity of Sir Lyndon, of his family, and of governance.
No, I have no problem with that. But see, the point is, if you're going to keep crossing swords, see, the family has certain interests. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is when the interests of a particular group of people, which is the minority, supersedes the national interest of the Bahamian people. Now, I have a big problem with that.
Yes.
So every time when someone uses that image, you got to be paying monies to a particular minority group of people. I have a serious problem with that. Because then it looks as if the minority is taking advantage of the interests of the majority. And I think it's a very good discussion that you're having. I don't have any clear-cut answers myself, but I know this. The rights of the minority cannot supersede the interests of the majority. That's constitutional.
Thank you.
I can say
now,
that much.
Another question before you go.
Yeah.
What is a BTE degree, sir? And how I could get one?
BET? The first time I heard it was when it was on the show.
BTE, been to England degree. What that is?
Well, I guess I could interject here. Before then, a number of lawyers articled here locally.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And this is when he was considered to be leader of the PLP, and compared to Fox. Fox was considered to be the new leader of the PLP, and they were competing. And the term being to England was saying that Pinklon was more qualified because he actually had a legal degree from out of England instead of articled like everybody else. So that was the being to England degree. And that's how
Thank you.
Pinklon won over Fox.
Okay, but that is an internal thing, I guess, among them at that particular time. Mm-hmm. Yes. But let us look at the wider interest, the national interest of the Bahamian people. And while I'm saying that we have to get this clear once and for all, because I don't think it is fair to the masses who have contributed, the thousands, my mother and father, my grandparents, and all of those other people are going to be snubbed because of the interest of a particular minority of persons. I have a serious problem with that. While I'm not saying, and I want to make this very clear, I'm not saying that they don't have any rights. But the conflict is going to be coming time when you're going to say to the public, you cannot use, there's only one image of the man. Okay? He is their father for that family, yes, but he's also father of the nation. Now, where do you draw the line between personal interest and national interest? That seems to be a problem in this country.
That's one of the most important questions.
Pardon?
I was just saying that's one of the most important questions.
Yes, it is, because you have a problem in running this country where personal interest supersedes the interest of the majority. We know that's a problem right now today in this country.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not surprised that the family is going to take a certain course of action, which they have a right to do.
Yes.
But then we can't keep having this clash with the national interest and personal interest of a family keep coming up over and over again. I'm not going to say that we shouldn't have guidelines. We should have them. Yes. But you can't keep having this war going on, because then you know what's going to eventually happen? It's going to whittle down hard to achieve through that particular individual, the Lyndon Pinling, and it's going to demean all of the national accomplishments of our people. We cannot allow that to happen because of the interest of a particular family, the Pinling family. Thank you very much, Ms. Greene.
My pleasure again. And Erin, we have one more caller. Let's patch that caller through and then let you comment on that. Go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Good morning.
Hello. Good morning. I can hardly hear you.
Just go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Greene and Mr. Nuri. You know, it's amazing sometimes, although I listen to that intensely. I was very clear, very. I like the conversation where it's going. But some people only have 30 seconds. Others can talk all morning. But anyway, God bless us. We also have the terminology of Christian nation. Hello, Ms. Greene?
Just go ahead. Go ahead.
We also have the terminology of Christian nation. But do we know any of our forefathers who were Christians? Do we even know which church they went to? The churches when they were invited there to some convention or some funeral or some wedding. Now, I know we have Christians that I refer to them as Christians because I know, and we all know, people that were in church all the time. Milo Butler, Eddie Hanna, Miss Penland, don't miss a day in St. Agnes Church. Eddie Hanna don't miss a day in St. Matthew's or St. Margaret's. Milo Butler was in St. Matthew's Church 1 o'clock every day. Every day during the week, he would go to St. Matthew's Church to pray at 1 o'clock after lunch with his family. I refer to them as what I call Christians, believed in the word Christianity and so forth. The rest of us use it loosely. Another thing, we seem to be afraid to ask questions in regard to pensions. Does Ms. Pinland also get the pension from Mr. Pinland as well as her pension as Governor General? Does she get two pensions?
Sparky,
Hold on, let me ask this question. They told me that Antoine...
Mr. Nuri.
Go ahead.
Pause it for a second.
Antoine, the photographer...
Pause it for a second, please, Mr. Nuri.
Hold on, Ms. Greene, can you...
Producer, pause it for a second, please.
Go ahead, Erin.
Thank you. We're not here to attack the family of the Pinlings. This is such a sensitive topic that we're not creating a space for anybody to think that they can attack or ask questions or target questions to the family of the Pinlings. That's not what we're here to do. And in the spirit of the last caller, who we gave time to, because he iterated that he was trying to find balance and not a position of power, right? We're not going to get to that. We're not going to get to that point, Sparky. There are lots of questions that have to be asked. And I got questions here about, did Pinling create a Bahamian political dynasty, right? Or did he try to establish his own when others were doing the same thing, right? I got a question here. Who are the true heirs and inheritors of the Pinling dynasty? But we're trying to ask these questions in an environment that does not target or direct negative sentiment towards the family members of Pinling. You see, because I can understand the position of the Pinlings. I want to ask the question, have we, the people, sufficiently honored Sir Lyndon to the point where his family could trust us with his image, his story, telling of his legacy? Has the government treated Sir Lyndon respectfully, or have they only used it to further their own political agendas? We got some hard questions here.
And that's an interesting point, Erin. And we see Dame Marguerite brought up that issue recently at the graveyard ceremony, saying that you're using legacy of Sir Lyndon for your own political expedience. That was her criticism, right? And then you question whether the government has honored Sir Lyndon enough for the term father of the nation. And let's name the things that they have done recently in terms of tribute to Sir Lyndon. They have the small replica of his image at the airport and the naming of the airport after him, right? Mm-hmm. And now I ask you, what else? And now the term father of the nation is the term now, not honoring somebody, but as the father of a nation, what should be constituted as an honor? And have we done enough?
I'm with you. I don't want to say name a building after him because we don't maintain buildings, and I don't think that's really an honor in this town anymore. Do we have a Sir Lyndon Pinland memorial lecture?
But I think the family does that every year, the foundation. But what has to do anything with the government?
What day? Well, this is what I'm saying. What day? Why hasn't the government initiated? I don't know what is the day of the annual Sir Lyndon Pinland lecture hosted by his family. Does the government even support the family in publicizing that and ensuring that Bahamians could participate in it? I think we've done a poor job of honoring Sir Lyndon Pinland.
Okay, and that's interesting. And just recently, I was reading a post about Martin Luther King Jr. and the bigger than life statue what they have of him, right, and represented to the history of Martin Luther King and the repository of information and detail that the local Americans can go. There is no place there that Bahamians can go and learn about the father of the nation, books, pictures, and archives, details, old speeches, right? There is no place. So when you see that they are dubbing him the father of the nation, and then you put that juxtaposed to what has been done and to honor him, we see that this is all for games. This is all for political theatrics and not necessarily what it's supposed for. So you guys spent almost a whole show without saluting, talking about Sir Lyndon. This is why people never learn history. You guys making these things personal, right? I say, the next quote says, text says, you can't use anyone's image to promote or benefit without paying. Okay, I ain't gonna read that part, right? So that's what the texters say. But we have a short commercial break, and we're coming back to it, and we're talking about the legacy of Sir Lyndon. Who owns the legacy? What can Bahamians do in order to celebrate Sir Lyndon? What has the government done to celebrate Sir Lyndon instead of the small speeches type thing that invoking thought public exercises? And you mentioned that whether Bahamians have access to these lectures. So all of that we're talking about. But this has been On the Clock with Erin Greene. We're going to take this short commercial break now, and we'll be right back after this short commercial.
The Grand Bahama News is available every Tuesday in the Nassau Guardian. Buy your local paper at Freeport convenience stores, Fine Foods, and Bellevue Gifts. Want to reach your Grand Bahama customers? Then call Barefoot Marketing at 827-4578 or message them for ad rates via their Facebook page. Advertising opportunities now include classified ads too. Keep up with all the latest Grand Bahama news in the Nassau Guardian newspaper every Tuesday.
July, August, September.
Bendy, what on earth are you doing now with all those red X's on the calendar?
I verified in person for my NIB pension today, so I'm crossing out all the months until I have to verify again.
Oh, yeah. By law, we are required to verify twice a year, in our birth months and then again 6 months later. It's important so we can continue to receive our benefit payments.
Yes, the friendly lady at NIB reminded me that the verification forms are available online at select retail locations and that you don't even have to verify in person. Once a sanctioned authority certifies your form, it can be emailed to verification@nib-bahamas.com or placed in the Dropbox at any NIB location.
NIB is making everything so convenient. The verification process is simple. NIB's website and social media pages. At NIB, they're making it easier for you.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
And welcome back to On the Clock with Erin Greene. This is C.A. Nuri, who's in studio while Erin is here via Zoom. And Erin, I want to ask you this, right? We're going to have the masterclass lecture put on by the government and I assume the family, right? What all should we expect to be talked about, showcased at this lecture? Will there be any pictures, any history of Sir Lyndon that people can browse through and about as the lecture goes on? Will the lecturer just read the narrative or the bio, like similar to what you did earlier? Or will it go and give details about particular era, particular issues and good times and bad times of Sir Lyndon so we can appreciate the man? Is there a need to appreciate Sir Lyndon as a whole man or just concentrate on the gold days?
Well, let me start with that last question. I think there is a need, even in the political realm, there's a need to understand Pinling the whole man. I think it's been to the advantage of politicians in the political class to obfuscate who Pinling was, right? So then you can flash forms of him or illusions of him to the public when it benefits you. I hope what we will have at the event is produced from a partnership with the family of images, personal stories, and I hope that they've been able to capture Bahamians who grew up with Sir Lyndon, right? Like in that Wikipedia bio, it says that his father had a shop. His father came from Jamaica to be a police officer, I think. He had a shop. He worked in the shop with his dad. He made deliveries. And he actually took over the job of Sir Sidney Poitier, who used to deliver groceries and goods from the shop. So I'm hoping that they have been people who grew up with Sir Lyndon.
Let me bait you, Erin. How important is that Jamaican narrative? And having a police officer, an imported police officer, a West Indian police officer, in growing up Sir Lyndon.
Well,
clearly, he was not normal or typical. No, typical is the right word. Typical Bahamian man.
Thank you for asking me that question. I hope we could sort of slide into your hour just a touch. But what it raised for me is would Sir Lyndon fit under this definition being passed around of organic Bahamian?
No, he's not organic at all. No, he can't be organic.
Right? And this is what it's saying to me, that if we're using that definition of organic Bahamian, then Pinling is out of there. And so I wanted to ask this, Mr. Nuri. I found this definition, but I don't know. Is it definition for organic Bahamian or is it definition for Bahamian politician? It has to be one part the government high school, one part Family Island, one part BTE degree, that's been to England degree, one part Hill. It could be Fort Hill, Over the Hill, Como Hill, Driggs Hill, or even Forbes Hill. And I just don't know. Is that the recipe for an organic Bahamian or a Bahamian politician?
Whatever it is, and despite his lineage and connection to Jamaica, the Pinling can trace his legacy up to 1787 in the Bahamas, 84, 87 in the Bahamas. So definitely he has his roots tied to the Bahamas. But I have a text here that says, "Good morning, CA and Erin. My understanding of history suggests that we should not have a position of father of the nation. We should have a top category called founding fathers. Let us put politics down and look holistically at the players who brought about majority rule, independence, etc. Let our honors be merit-based, and many individuals were responsible for where our country is today." And they said, great show.
Absolutely, thank you. Because I question, is the use of father of the nation only perpetuating a culture of patronage, right? And do we need to get rid of that type of language to be able to shift the political culture to something that is more inclusive, equitable, and fair?
Interesting. Equitable and fair is what you use. There's another text which says, "Preach, Erin, preach. The venue is wrong. Preach. Sadly, it's always a party atmosphere, no matter the function." And I read for that particular point in terms of preach is, who does Sir Lyndon belong to? Is he, if he's could use the term father of the nation, does he belong to us? And does venue Is venue important? Is who delivering the message important? Is the family being involved important? Is having an alternative story, layperson story, also important in terms of the legacy of Sir Lyndon?
And would Pindling have chosen this venue if he were hosting an event for a forefather, or if he were hosting an event of this nature? Would this have been the venue that he would have chosen for others or for himself?
That's interesting again. That's
And
interesting.
Mr. Nuri, I know we're close to the end of this hour. I got a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
If I just want to throw them in case we don't get to them in the second hour.
I'm going to tweak my second hour so we can continue this conversation. That's what I'm going to do.
All right. So let's close off this side, but let me whet the interests of the listeners. Here are some more of the questions that I have. Did Pindling weaken the education system to preserve his hold on power? Did Pindling discourage the playing of Caribbean and African music on the public airwaves? What are some books, essays, and documentaries about Pindling, the Bahamas, and Bahamian politics from pre-majority rule to the end of the Pindling political dynasty? Those are some of the questions I have up for the...
I see how you question whether the legacy is whole. So that should be interesting on the next side. But I see we're out of time right now. This has been On the Clock with Erin Greene. This is C.A. Nuri. We're talking about the legacy of Sir Lyndon. We're talking about how should we celebrate him. We are also talking about the father of the nation. What does that mean? We're talking about, is the government doing enough to celebrate Sir Lyndon? Have they done enough to celebrate Sir Lyndon? We're talking about the ownership of Sir Lyndon's image. That is owned by the family, and we have to pay money to use any image of him moving forward and pay it to the foundation? Or do we have access to his image, access to his life story, access to his legacy? And all of that discussion we were talking about. And what we're going to do is, even though the subject matter is kind of different on the next line of the show, we're going to tweak it to make sure we continue this message. And Erin, I'm excited about the next line.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. This has been On the Clock with Erin Greene. Have a wonderful day.